That's exactly right. And I think one thing that I always like to remind folks is that when you're thinking about an EB1A, you have to think about what have you spent the majority of your time on. So for example, if one is, in business, right, like yourself, then clearly when you look at the various criteria, the most important of those criteria will be your original business related contributions of major significance, because that is where you have invested your time and your energy and your brain power into developing something that has been transformative. And I think I'll say one thing that I've observed over the years, and I find that a lot of very talented, successful people, they hang around with very talented, successful people, right? So what ends up happening is you just think it's like normal, right? So, oh yeah, I'm a, commercial lead for, an important, pharmaceutical product, or, I'm a engineer, creating a new IT product, or I'm, migrating a database on behalf of a government entity. These are just normal things, par for the course. But to the rest of society, these are not normal things. These are extraordinary things. And, anyone, I think, I always say, like, one test to know whether you have, reached this level is, how would you feel if your children, achieved what you're, stating that you've done, or if the adjudicator's children, right, have done that, wouldn't they be happy? So, that is kind of maybe a different way of looking at things. But I really feel like we need to turn the page and close the case on the idea that the only way to achieve a self-petition green card is by, publishing a bunch of articles or having citations. This to me is and sometimes it becomes a fool's errand, because you have somebody who has, great success in technology or business, and then, they go scramble and publish some articles 2 or 3 months before their petition. But in your situation, we didn't do that, did we?
No, I think in our case, the essential part was, discovering or revealing really the story. I think it comes down to what's your magic, what are you, such an expert in, and I think when you establish that story, the rest just sort of comes by itself. So in my case, it was, a certain, and just as you said, it's important to take a bird's eye view, because I do remember a number of instances indeed where I was walking you through my work and I was like, oh, this is really, nothing particular. This is nothing really, of high importance. And you were like, oh no, this is kind of the kind of thing, we wanna feature, because to you it might be just another, day in your business, but the impact of this from a bird's eye view or from a larger perspective, this has a huge impact that's, exactly, required in the way the EB1A regulations exactly require. So I think we spent a lot of time discovering those hidden gems in my work, in my resume, not in the sense that they were hidden somewhere, but they were there, but they were just waiting to be put in the right perspective, all right. They were waiting to be used as the right building blocks of the case.
Indeed. And I like the word that you use when you said reveal, and I think that's a lot of what we do is we really look at a specific profile, and we want to, first of all, polish off those achievements and then reveal them to the adjudicator and be able to tell the person's story in a way that does justice to them and to everything that they've accomplished and achieved, such that we build around a statutory requirement, because we know there are specific requirements for the EB1A. And it's not only meeting a minimum of 3 or 4 criteria, but it's also a qualitative narrative to demonstrate that you are in a situation where you have met a standard that is at the highest level of your field. And I think one of the ways we do that is by narrowing down the field. So if, for example, maybe when you came into this, you thought, well, I'm in the field. So can you kind of share that process of, how
Mhm.
can we help others understand that, well, for example, you may be a software engineer, or you may be a petroleum engineer, or you may be, somebody who is, in the, commercial, businesses, but how can you maybe, go through a process where we narrow down the area of expertise that you have. So how did that process feel in your mind?
I think that's really one of the essential parts of the process, and I feel like there's a really tricky balance there. So you don't want to go too broad and say I'm one of the 1 to 5% of my field in terms of business. I'm the best in business, because that's really practically impossible to establish, and that's probably not true. Um,
Yeah, I
but
always say that, if I want to say that, okay, my field is law and I'm among the very best attorneys, Biden, why did he overlook me on the Supreme Court? That was
yeah, exactly. And then I think on the other side of the spectrum, you don't want to go too specific, because let's say um, you are you made a really specific publication, or you achieved something really specific. That was a big success, but if you define that field of endeavor too narrowly, then whatever you achieve in that field becomes sort of not substantial. I mean, you might be the best in that really specific field, but it is such a small field of endeavor that it doesn't make sense for someone to be considered a top, business executive or a poor performer. I think in our case, it was really finding the right balance there. And I was already, working in the field of rare diseases, to be specific, which is already a rare field of endeavor. But I think we did a really clinical job in terms of, not so this might sound to some people as if we're almost manufacturing, or just trying to make something fit into a certain category. But I think it's the other way around. The work is there. It's just about taking the right snapshot, taking the right section of the resume. And in our case, it was I think fairly easy, because um, when we defined the area of endeavor, we were then able to almost do a sanity check with doing a Google search and searching the impact of it. Or I think there
exactly.
was there were a number of different types of evidence, where things like news articles, local, international, national, as well as I think we found that there was a congressional caucus in my field, which is really uh, another way to prove that this is something of importance. So
Yeah, and I think what you're speaking to is that one of the requirements of an EB1A is that you demonstrate what's called prospective benefit to the United States. It's written there in the statute. You don't hear it too much or even see it on the USCIS website. But my practice has always been to really highlight the importance of one's area of endeavor as it relates to U.S. interests. So, I mean, certainly when you're talking about the field of rare diseases, I mean, this is where I mean, I hope this is not a cynical way to put it, but you can really pull on heartstrings with the adjudicator and make sure that he or she is understanding the stakes that are at play, right? Where one is kind of going through that. And I think this applies to a lot of fields, and it could be something that is like economic. It could be something that kind of like transcends the various kind of normal types of standards of fields. So, for example, we see a lot of work being done in energy, right? And so in an energy situation, we kind of felt like, oh no, now that the kind of administrations are changing, there's more of a shift toward renewable energy, and people who are working in maybe like the gas industry, for example, or oil and gas, they're really not going to be able to make a narrative that is of national importance or prospectively benefiting the United States. But then, events change, right? And you have, what's going on now around the world, and all of a sudden you see what's going on with gas prices. And anybody that's working in oil and gas, I mean, you can make an unbelievably strong narrative right now. And at the end of the day, that adjudicator is driving to work, right? And they are going to really kind of, so you can appeal to the different, situations, whether it's medical, whether it's energy, whether it's technology. And I think that's sort of what I've always wanted to do and have been successful at, is when I think about a uniquely tailored approach to meet each and every client's needs, that's part of the narrative. And I would say it's one of the most important, is to really show how we will prospectively benefit the United States. So to that end, in terms of like perspective, views on life and everything, I mean, what do you get out of this? I mean, now you're obviously have been approved, things are moving forward. So what's like the plan, and, how does that kind of like freedom of not being, tied to always having to, be on a temporary work visa or travel out of the country and back to renew it, and maybe, and also being controlled by a specific employer, right? So how does it feel to just be liberated from that? And also, how would you advise others to kind of do the same?